my rabbi sent me the Fresh and Fit clip that was going around last week, and he was, I think, rightfully kind of shocked by what he saw. We'll play it in a second. You and me have been seeing these comments for 22 months, so for me, it was not. It was still pretty shocking, but not quite as shocking. But let's play the clip and talk about it for a moment.
What did the Jewish did something to the Germans that made them act a certain way, but nobody wants to talk about it. Like the Jews don't want to take accountability.
They don't.
Yes.
I'm with you on that one.
Okay.
That's why like there was up to something, so the Germans wanted to take them out.
Like
it had to be something. Like Germans wanted to take them out, all of them out.
They damn near wiped everybody off the map.
They started it. It's like it's somebody
damn,
that
he's
mad.
hard. Like talk shit about them.
The Holocaust was the only way he can take out a huge population, like a huge amount of Jews all in one setting. But I already know what's going on. Like I'm not dumb. Like I know like the Jews did something. That's why they sent up here. They're trying to take back, like they're trying to take back and get repercussions, especially
repercussions.
I guess my question is, can you criticize the state of Israel and its government policies like that girl astutely did, Michael? I mean,
very good point.
I'm just saying, if we can't criticize Israel's government policies, like, what are we doing? And why do we want to censor a girl like that? I just think it's going to lead to an increase in anti-Semitism.
So first of all, this was so bad that even Rumble took it off. Yeah, ooh. Rumble, the free speech platform for right wingers, I believe took this down because it violated their policy.
Yeah.
So this was bad. I mean, so first of all, for someone who's just seeing this out of context, what podcast was this on? And just tell the people a little bit about what this podcast is, so you have some understanding.
So this is from the Fresh and Fit podcast, hosted by a man named Myron Gaines. And look, this is the real bottom feeder, darkest corners of the internet you can find. This is a guy who has Only Girls fans on to shit on them and call them whores. He talks about trying to emulate and lead a life of masculinity and sort of be a model for young men, even though he doesn't have a family, doesn't have a wife or children or relationships, and models a very pathetic existence of kind of sitting in a basement studio with a buddy of his, being actually toxically masculine. Whatever you call toxic masculinity that was made up before, this is the opposite reaction to that. You know, the opposite reaction to toxic femininity or excess wokeness is this pendulum swinging completely the other way, hating women, hating Jews. It's the woke right manifest in the form of this podcast, and they're really bottom feeders. At one point, this guy was on Flagrant, and Flagrant, Andrew, had said he refused to release the episode. He's like, guys, this is going to make you look bad. We're not going to put this out. So this really, if you want to test the limits of free speech, it's this. And what this guy has done is trafficked in all the dumb anti-Semitic tropes. The Jews did 9/11, the dancing Israelis, the USS Liberty, all the different claims. It's being perpetuated by a guy like this, Myron Gaines, who really also just wants clout, clicks, and attention, fancies himself an intellectual, tries to go out into the street Charlie Kirk style, and I think makes a fool of himself. But he's a loser, and he puts this stuff out, and he wants nothing more than to be mentioned by the pop culture movers and shakers of the day. And he traffics in the classic anti-Semitism of Holocaust minimization and denial. That's what the show is. That's what he does. So I'm not surprised to see it. But it does highlight, like, look at what he thinks will get clicks. Do you see how he starts to smile? It's like the anti-Semitism that has now become fashionable and edgy and cool to discuss in what you would say in polite society 5 years ago, you would never, ever consider doing, not because of cancel culture, but because of decency.
Right. So this guy, Myron Gaines, is not Charlemagne. This isn't happening on the Breakfast Club. So, like, I think the response that this is now so mainstream, everyone panic, I think is a little overblown. But I don't think it's so overblown because, like, it's like a young person, like, educated in this country, probably spends a lot of time online, thinks this, and I'm sure she's not the only one.
Right. Oh, you mean like how reflective is this of mainstream young Gen Alpha, Gen Z culture?
I think like a normal boomer who gets this on their phone is like, oh my God, is this Joe Rogan? No.
Yes.
But it's not nothing.
Okay, so here's the thing. The host of this show has been a guest on Patrick Bet David, Piers Morgan, He's been called by Patrick a really effective communicator. Myron Gaines, like that's what you have to say about Myron Gaines. And I'm a fan of some of the stuff PBD's done. I like some of the conversations he's had and the space that he's created in that world. And I get that he's building that audience. But, you know, he'll have like the biggest, dumbest anti-Semites on to be like, I just think the Jews control everything and they're evil and they need to be destroyed. Okay, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Like, I want to explore that because you're an effective communicator. I'm like, guys, we can have a little bit of courage and moral clarity here. And all of these people are sharing this clip. And I'm sorry, you're sharing this clip saying, Piers Morgan sharing this clip saying, disgusting, horrific. I'm like, and I tweeted the other day, I got to read it to you. I was like, a lot of the people who have amplified and mainstreamed some of the most unapologetically anti-Semitic figures over the past 2 years are now suddenly wondering where all of this anti-Semitism came from. So if you can't be complicit in spreading these ideas and amplifying them, even if you don't hold by them, and then wonder where it comes from and then be surprised by it that it's become mainstream. If you were part of that process, you got to own it. And if you've had these conversations uncritically, and of course, Piers will say, I've had these people on and I've called them shameless, anti-Semitic, and bigoted. But if they didn't have audiences, you wouldn't have them on. So let's not kid ourselves as to why you give Kanye 1, 2, 3, 4 chances. It's because he's the biggest pop star in the world. And so you're willing to let his message get out there, even if you want to stand and challenge it. I just mean you have to look in the mirror and take a little bit of ownership here and being complicit in being a part of this muck.
I would also send this to Joe Rogan and say, like, you talking to Daryl Cooper might not be a problem, but this is what comes after that. You know, like when you have a quote unquote historian retelling the story of the Holocaust on your podcast to audiences like this girl or this young woman, you know, that's what happens. And like, and you don't have to take accountability, but like, hey, here it is.
That's what Douglas was warning about in the episode, that you're feeding this weird area of the internet, even if unintentionally, that is really, really dark. And for example, like this guy, being recognized in the mainstream, what I take issue with is, like, say, Dave Smith going on and talking to Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields and these people who all overlap in this space, in this dark corner, the people who indulge and engage with them. One could say, listen, it doesn't mean I endorse their views. I don't agree with them. So why can't we be able to engage and talk and have speech? Okay, but if you're going to have these conversations uncritically, and if a Jake Shields or a Myron Gaines comes away with a conversation with you, a Dave Smith or a Dave Smith type, and feels better and reaffirmed about their positions, that's not a good thing. So don't tell me you've gone on to engage with them and helped maybe correct their path if they feel like, no, it is true. Like the Jews did take advantage of this Holocaust narrative to like perpetuate a Mossad psyop and take over and destroy Americans and drag them into 9/11. If you make them feel better about their conspiratorial positions and that they're not crazy for thinking those things, then you didn't really properly challenge them, and you have to just like own up to that. And I don't know what your goals are in doing that. I'm not even ascribing malice to those intentions. Maybe you want to just have just good rapport, and maybe that will steer them in and of itself. But look, like, don't be surprised when this stuff starts to circulate rather unapologetically. Yeah, and I just think you don't be surprised.
I'm also tracking the slow progression from calling out Zionists to calling out Jews, and like this seems like an inflection point also, where eventually the term Zionist is just going to be dropped, and they'll just start calling us Jews.
Yes.
And then I don't know what Dave Smith does at that point. How does he reconcile all that?
Well, because ultimately what a lot of these people end up doing is blaming the Zionist Jews and Bibi and Israel for the rise in all that anti-Semitism we're worried about. It's only Jews who are blamed for that. Right, and I'm like, you would never say that to any other group that was being targeted for harassment. You're very against collective punishment for Palestinians, but somehow Jews must be collectively responsible for Israel.
Why do you think they hate us so much?
Why do you think they hate us so much? It's sort of justifying it. And I don't think people realize that it's not the actions of Israel in Gaza or Bibi that give rise to anti-Semitism. It gives permission for anti-Semitism. That's a very big difference. And taking that opportunity has opened up this pathway for a lot of people who want to express it, to have full permission to do it and look virtuous while doing so.
Okay, before we move on to Gaza, but just on that point, an interesting question I've been thinking of is even taking the most cynical view of anti-Semitism, where you're right, everyone's just waiting for permission to be anti-Semitic. You also still have to confront the fact that sure, if everyone is just waiting to be anti-Semitic, don't give them an excuse. And what's been happening in Gaza has given them that excuse. And so like it's hard it's hard to say, like,
it's such a
do
pass.
they hate us more because of it? Like, kind of. Maybe we could have put it off for a couple of years, you know? Like,
but you're not
it's true that anti-Semitism has gotten worse since the war. That is true.
Isn't it interesting that anti-Semitism gets worse and Israel's the one that got attacked on October 7th and you immediately started seeing a pouring out of it?
I'm not saying it's right, but I think it's two hard facts to hold in your mind at once. That, like,
what are you saying exactly, Michael, before the comments come after you?
That yes, what Israel has been doing has just given permission to anti-Semites to be anti-Semitic, but also what Israel has doing has given permission to anti-Semites. Like, it has. So, if they never went into Gaza, it might not be an issue right now. And that's just true, and I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, and then what I would say is turn my judgment back on the people who condemn Zionists and Jews rather than the anti-Semitism. It's like that's where you decide to channel your outrage and frustration, as to say it gives them permission. So you're going to speak out against those who support Israel and not those who hate Jews because of the actions of Israel. I mean, that's a real moral failing and collapse in my view. You give such a pass to bigotry and anti-Semitism, you know? It's unbelievable.
I don't know if it's a pass as much as it's just grounded in reality where, you know,
but wouldn't the brave
people out there trying to be hating us? So
yeah, but wouldn't the brave, proper response from anyone, even if you're more sympathetic to the Palestinian narrative and cause, to say, excuse me, I'm drawing a clear line in the sand here. Just because of the actions of the Israeli government, and I've been making this, and if you've been hypothetically making this case the whole time, that Zionism is not Judaism, if you're using this as an excuse for your Jew hatred, get out. You don't belong here. If you're ripping down posters of kids, you don't belong here. If you're really pro-Palestinian and not simply anti-Israel, it behooves you to make those distinctions clear, not on the Jews supporting Israel, to make sure that hate is tempered because our support, God forbid, should induce hate. You're giving such a pass. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You are being very non-judgmental to that reality. And I don't think on the left, certainly, they'd never do that with any other marginalized group or minority group that they would deem. They would never do it.
It's non-judgmental.
In fact, it's the opposite.
It's purely practical. It's purely saying, hey, I want to live in peace. And so let's just do whatever I can do.
I understand. Just this point, though, to the left-wing anti-Zionists, right? To the left-wing anti-Israel folk, when it happened with Muslims after 9/11, what was their first instinct? Their biggest concern was the rise of Islamophobia.
Not what the Islamists did to cause Islamophobia.
Right. Isn't that interesting that in the case of actual terrorism in the United States from radical jihadis, their concern was for the rise in Islamophobia and to make sure we combat that. So in the case of Muslims, they were very into the backlash and combating whatever backlash and collective punishment people might bestow on innocent Muslims who have nothing to do with that. But in the case of Israel, they're very into making sure that anyone supportive or looking like they're in that camp or on that side of the Israel side is collectively deemed responsible for every action in Gaza. That is such a glaring left-wing double standard, and it involves the Jews. There's no more bigger example to me of left-wing anti-Semitism and double standardism